I didn't notice it at first. The road was a narrow two-lane stretch cutting through farmland gone black with night. No streetlights, no houses, just wet asphalt reflecting my headlights like a river of oil. Rain ticked softly against the windshield, more mist than storm, turning the air outside into a pale haze. The wipers moved in a tired rhythm, thunk, drag, squeak, smearing the glow instead of clearing it. The only steady sound was the engine's low hum and the faint whistle of air through the vents. My phone lay face down in the cup holder between the seats. I hadn't touched it in at least 20 minutes. That's why the light took a moment to register. A pale beam slid across the dashboard, thin and concentrated. It trembled with the car's vibration, cutting through the dim cabin like a finger. For a second, I thought it was an oncoming vehicle cresting a hill behind me, but the rearview mirror was empty, just darkness and the faint red glint of my own taillights stretching away. Then I looked down. The flashlight icon glowed white on my screen. The phone had rotated slightly, its beam angled up and to the right, pointing directly at the passenger seat. I frowned. Maybe I'd brushed it when shifting gears. Maybe the car hit a bump. I reached over to grab it, and as I did, the beam wavered, jittering across the fabric of the empty seat. Empty. Gray cloth upholstery. A shallow depression where my backpack had been earlier, now on the back seat. The seatbelt hung slack against the pillar. Nothing else. But the light didn't scatter randomly. It seemed to fix on a particular spot mid-seat, near the edge closest to the console. The glow pooled there, brighter somehow, as if catching on something that wasn't reflecting back. My hand hovered. The cabin felt smaller than it had a moment ago. The air heavier. The rain's patter dulled, like cotton pressed into my ears. Even the engine's hum seemed to lower in pitch, stretching into a distant drone. I picked up the phone. The flashlight remained on. I turned it toward the windshield, then toward the floor mats. It behaved normally. Clean beam, predictable reflection. When I angled it back toward the passenger seat, the light narrowed again, concentrating as though the darkness there had substance. The beam bent slightly at the edges, warping like heat rising off pavement. I swallowed. "Stop," I muttered, and tapped the screen. The flashlight icon dimmed. The cabin fell back into its natural gloom, lit only by the instrument panel's soft blue glow and the blurred sweep of headlights through mist. I set the phone down again, face up this time. The road stretched on, empty. My tires hissed against wet asphalt. I told myself it was a glitch, a sensor misfire, moisture in the charging port, anything reasonable. 10 seconds later, the flashlight turned on again. No vibration, no notification sound, just a sudden bloom of white cutting across the center console and landing, precise and unwavering, on the passenger seat. My chest tightened. I hadn't touched it. The beam didn't tremble now. It was steady, as if someone were holding the phone with deliberate aim. The seat looked the same, and yet, there was a faint difference in the shadows, a softness to the space just above the fabric, where the light faded instead of striking, like it was outlining something transparent. The faintest contour, head height if someone were sitting upright. I blinked hard. The shape dissolved. Rain intensified briefly, drumming on the roof in a scattered rush. The sound felt distant underwater. I could hear my own breathing louder than anything else. I reached for the phone again, slower this time. Before I could touch it, the beam shifted. It moved up the seat back, tracing an invisible spine, paused at shoulder height, then angled slightly left, toward the window. The glass reflected the interior faintly. Dashboard lights, steering wheel, my own pale face hovering like a ghost over darkness. And in the passenger window's reflection, for half a heartbeat, there were two silhouettes, mine and another seated beside me. I jerked my gaze to the actual seat. Empty. The reflection snapped back to normal. Just me and the vacant space. The phone slipped from the cup holder and landed flat on the console. Flashlight still on. The beam shot upward, illuminating the roof liner and the edge of the sun visor. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Okay," I whispered, though I wasn't sure to whom. The air felt colder along my right side. Not dramatically, just enough that the skin on my forearm prickled. The vents were angled toward me, not the passenger seat. I hadn't changed them. The flashlight flickered. Not off, just a faint stutter. A pulse. Each flicker coincided with a subtle shift in the car's ambience. The engine's hum would dull for a fraction of a second. The rain would mute. The world outside would seem to hold its breath. With each pulse, the beam lowered by degrees. Roof, seat back, headrest, seat. It was descending, as though tracking something settling into place. I couldn't look directly at the seat anymore. My eyes kept darting to the mirrors instead. Rear view, darkness, road, empty back seat. Side mirror, blurred white lines and fog. Passenger window reflection. The second silhouette returned. Fainter this time, closer to me, his head angled slightly forward, as if studying my profile. I snapped my head to the right. Nothing, but the air between us felt occupied. The kind of occupied you feel in an elevator when someone stands too near. Pressure without contact. A sense of space taken. The flashlight beam tightened to a small, concentrated circle on the center of the passenger seat. It stopped moving. Then, slowly, it began to tilt upward, toward the headrest, without the phone itself shifting position. The light was bending, not physically rotating. Bending, as if refracting around a form I couldn't see. My throat went dry. The beam reached head height and steadied. In the reflection of the passenger window, the second silhouette was no longer vague. It had definition now. A shoulder line, a curve of skull, and it was turned fully toward me. I could not make out features, only absence. A darker darkness where a face should be. The flashlight pulsed again. With each pulse, the silhouette's outline sharpened. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I told myself to stop the car, pull over. But the idea of stopping, of being stationary with it beside me, felt worse than motion. The road signs blurred past, unreadable in the rain. The beam shifted once more. Not at the seat, at the space between us. It illuminated the narrow gap above the console. The armrest, the air where my elbow hovered. And in that air, for a split second I saw texture, like breath in winter, a faint mist outlining a forearm resting inches from mine. The temperature on my right side dropped sharply. I felt weight on the seat. The car's suspension dipped, barely perceptible, but real enough that the steering wheel tugged slightly. There was something sitting beside me, not visible, but present. The flashlight flickered violently now, strobing in quick bursts. Each flash revealed more of the outline in the window reflection. A hollow where eyes might be, a suggestion of a mouth that wasn't quite aligned with a human face. And then the beam steadied for one final time. It pointed directly at the passenger seatbelt. The buckle, the metal tongue lay against the seat, untouched. The beam held there, waiting. A realization crept over me, slow and suffocating. It wasn't showing me what was there. It was showing me what wasn't. The seatbelt wasn't fastened. My breathing became shallow. In the reflection, the silhouette leaned closer. His head tilted, curious, patient. The flashlight shifted slightly, illuminating the empty space where a chest would be. Then it angled down to the buckle again. An instruction. Strap it in, or it won't stay. My vision tunneled. The road ahead blurred into streaks of white and gray. The world felt padded, distant, like I was driving inside a sealed box. The weight on the seat increased. The car dipped more noticeably this time. Without looking, without daring to confirm, I reached blindly toward the passenger side. My fingers brushed cold air and then resistance, a pressure that yielded slightly under my touch, like fabric stretched over something solid. I snatched my hand back. The flashlight cut out. Total darkness. The instrument panel died. Headlights vanished. Engine silence swallowed everything. The car coasted, unseen, in pitch black. For 3 endless seconds, there was nothing. Then the lights snapped back on. Dashboard glowing. Headlights blazing through rain. Engine humming as if nothing had happened. The phone lay dark in the cup holder. The passenger seat looked empty. The seatbelt, however, was no longer slack. It was pulled across the seat, fastened, tight against a shape that depressed the fabric. And in the passenger window's reflection, I was no longer alone. The silhouette sat upright, perfectly still, seatbelt secured across its chest. Its head faced forward now, watching the road with me. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe too loudly. The flashlight had never been trying to reveal it. It had been trying to make sure it stayed. I noticed it because the fog thinned just enough to let the headlights stretch. Until then, the world had been small. A tight tunnel of gray. The beams swallowed a few yards ahead, their edges fraying into mist. The asphalt was slick, black as spilled oil, reflecting the light in long, trembling streaks. My tires hummed against it, steady, hypnotic, while the engine kept a low, patient throb beneath my feet. There were no other cars, no streetlights, just a two-lane highway cutting through fields I couldn't see. The curve warning sign appeared late, materializing from fog like something surfacing underwater. A black arrow bending left. I eased the wheel accordingly. The road curved left. My shadow curved right. At first, I thought it was just distortion, headlights hitting fog at an angle. But the shape sliding across the mist wasn't vague or abstract. It was unmistakably mine. The outline of my head and shoulders cast long and thin ahead of the car, projected onto the pale curtain of haze. And as I guided the car left, that shadow peeled away from the arc of the road and bent gently to the right, like it was following a different path entirely. I straightened the wheel instinctively. The road corrected under me. The tires hissed louder for a second where rubber met pooled water. The shadow snapped back in front of the car, aligning perfectly again, as though nothing had happened. My pulse fluttered. "Fog!" I murmured. "Just fog." The interior of the car felt insulated, too quiet. The air vents whispered faintly. The dash lights glowed a cool blue against my hands. In the rearview mirror, darkness pressed close, broken only by two red taillight reflections shimmering on wet pavement. The next bend came sooner than I expected. Another left. This time I watched carefully. The headlights cut a crescent through the mist. The shoulder line drifted inward. I turned the wheel slowly. And again, my shadow lagged a fraction of a second before separating from the beam and curving right. Not sharply, not dramatically, just enough to be wrong. It didn't jerk or snap. It flowed, as if it preferred that direction. I felt a prickle crawl across my scalp. The shadow wasn't cast on anything solid. It existed in the fog itself, a darker density within gray. Its edges were too defined. I could see the slope of my nose, the curve of my shoulders. Except the angle was off. The head tilted slightly. I wasn't tilting. I adjusted my posture deliberately, sitting upright, squaring my shoulders. The shadow corrected, but not fully. The tilt remained, subtle, as if it were regarding something to the right of the road. Something I couldn't see. The tires hummed on. The fog thickened again, swallowing the far edges of the beams. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. 11:47 p.m. I'd been driving this highway for nearly an hour. It should have intersected with the main road by now. The next road sign slid into view on the shoulder. Green reflective surface. White letters blurred by moisture. I leaned forward, squinting. It was the same curve warning sign. Black arrow bending left. Identical. My chest tightened. I had just passed that. I was sure I had. The sign drifted behind me, swallowed by fog. The road stretched straight for a long minute. My shadow returned to its obedient place ahead of the car, elongated and narrow. Then the asphalt began to arc left again. I didn't slow this time. I kept the wheel straight. The car resisted, tires whispering protest as they brushed the painted line. The curve approached regardless, gentle but undeniable. My shadow, cast against the fog, flowed smoothly to the right once more. And this time it didn't snap back when I corrected. Continued right, sliding out of alignment with the headlights. Detaching. For a second, I could see two shadows, one faint and accurate, clinging to the beam's true angle, and the other darker, more substantial, peeling away toward the unseen right side of the highway. My breath shortened. The darker one stretched farther, thinning as it left the brightest part of the light. His head turned slightly, no, more than slightly. It rotated almost fully, as if looking over its shoulder. Looking at me. I jerked my gaze to the side mirror. The mirror reflected only fog and the wet gleam of the road's edge. But something about the reflection felt delayed. I moved my head. My reflection moved a fraction of a second later. Just enough to feel wrong. The tires hit a patch of rougher pavement, gravel embedded in tar, and the vibration traveled up the steering column into my hands. The texture of the road felt different, like I drifted onto an older stretch of asphalt. The fog ahead thinned again. There was no shoulder to the right, no field, no guardrail, just darkness. The shadow continued curving right into that darkness, even as the car followed the road left. The separation widened. The darker shadow elongated, thinning like smoke pulled into a vent. And then it stopped, as if it had reached a boundary. The shape compressed slightly, gaining density again. His head lifted, and slowly, deliberately, it raised an arm. I did not move, but the shadow's arm lifted, pointing into the unseen right side of the night. Not at the road. Away from it. A warning or an invitation. The dashboard clock flickered. 11:47 p.m. Still, a cold ripple slid down my spine. I should have seen the main road by now. I should have seen any other sign. A mile marker, a farmhouse light, something. Instead, the next sign emerged from the fog. Green, reflective, curve left. Again, I felt something give way inside my chest. Not panic, not yet, but the realization that the road wasn't progressing. It was looping. I swallowed and did something reckless. At the start of the next left curve, I turned the wheel right. Not hard, just enough. The car's right tires left the asphalt and kissed the gravel shoulder. The sound changed instantly, crunching, uneven. The steering wheel vibrated under my grip. The headlights swung right, cutting into the fog. And for the first time, I saw where my shadow had been trying to go. There was no field. There was a narrow, unmarked road branching off the highway. Its entrance was swallowed in mist, invisible unless your lights hit it directly. It bent gently to the right. My shadow was already there, projected down its center. Standing upright, waiting, I froze. The highway curved left behind me, insistent. My car idled half on, half off the pavement. The engine's hum sounded strained now, as if muffled by something thicker than air. The shadow at the mouth of the side road did not match my posture. It stood outside the car. I was still seated, hands gripping the wheel. But that shadow, my outline unmistakable, was upright, head tilted toward the branching road. Then it stepped forward. One pace, into the fog. I felt something tug inside my chest. A pressure behind my sternum, like gravity had shifted slightly to the right. The dashboard lights dimmed briefly. The clock flickered. 11:47 p.m. Still, the fog seemed thinner along the side road, almost luminous. The mist moved differently there, curling inward instead of drifting across. I tried to lift my foot from the brake. My muscles hesitated. The shadow ahead raised its arm again and beckoned. A slow curl of fingers. Come. The highway behind me dissolved into gray. The curve sign was gone. There was only the right-hand road. My reflection in the rearview mirror shifted. For a heartbeat, I saw myself sitting in the passenger seat instead of the driver's. Hands folded in my lap. Watching. Then the image corrected. I was alone again, or I should have been. The pull in my chest intensified, as if something inside me recognized the path ahead. The shadow was smaller now, further down the right-hand road, but still visible in the headlights' reach. It didn't look wrong anymore. It looked complete, like the part of me that had already chosen. The engine's hum deepened, resonating through the cabin. Without consciously deciding to, I eased the wheel further right. The car rolled fully onto the narrow road. Gravel crunched beneath the tires before giving way to smoother pavement. The highway behind vanished into fog as though it had never existed. The headlights illuminated only a short stretch ahead. The shadow walked just at the edge of that light, never fully fading, never fully solid. Guiding, the dashboard clock blinked. 11:48 p.m. Finally, time moved. I exhaled shakily. The road narrowed further, trees emerging from the mist on either side. Their branches arched overhead, skeletal and bare. The shadow stopped. I slowed instinctively. It turned toward me one last time, and for the first time I understood. The thing curving right hadn't been my shadow. It had been me, and the figure still sitting behind the steering wheel, hands trembling, eyes wide, was only what the headlights happened to catch. The shadow raised its arm, pointed ahead. The fog parted briefly, revealing a car stopped in the middle of the road. Headlights off, driver's door open, empty. My car rolled closer. The shadow stepped forward and merged seamlessly with the darkness pooling inside that waiting vehicle. As I approached, I saw the license plate. It was mine. The engine of the car I was driving sputtered once. The lights flickered, and in the windshield's reflection, I was no longer in the driver's seat. I was standing on the road behind it, watching myself arrive.